host of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive Show on YouTube. Tell me to start with how serious you feel the threats of war are at the moment from Donald Trump.
I would say that they're higher than any time since the March 2003 war into Iraq. I think it is at that level. When you look at the amount of combat power that's being sent to the area, both naval power, air power, missile power, diplomatic forces, et cetera. I mean, this looks like you're talking about winding up for a big air campaign, not just a strike, but an air campaign. And then you look at the comments that President Trump is saying, especially with this unconditional surrender, talking about kind of embarrassment to Putin when he called him, offering a chance for a negotiated settlement to try to mediate. And Trump just says, yeah, why don't you figure out your own war first and we'll figure this one out. Everything indicates to me that probably a decision's already been made and they're just waiting on a final settlement of all the assets and all the resources in place, and then it's going to launch. Unfortunately, I think that's where we are.
I mean, Donald Trump campaigned and there was a great deal of rhetoric about peace, not getting involved in foreign conflicts, not exposing American troops or American personnel to any sort of danger. What's changed, do you think?
Well, when you look back at what Trump was saying in especially this specific case on March the 7th in the Oval Office, he said, hey, folks, we're in the last strokes here. We're in the last days, or there's going to be bombing. Either Iran agrees to the terms I've set out, or we're going to take care of it another way, et cetera. And then he said, subsequently, I think even on the same day at a different meeting, he said, if they don't do what I say, bombs will be falling. And then shortly after that, just a few weeks later, all of a sudden he dramatically softened his tone. And now he says, hey, I think we can solve this with diplomacy. I want Iran to succeed and to prosper, et cetera. He sent Witkoff over there. And then something changed again after that. Tulsi Gabbard in March 25th went out and said that our intelligence community assesses that there is no program for a nuclear weapon by Iran. The Ayatollah has not given the order, et cetera. And then all of a sudden in the middle part of June, you had Benjamin Netanyahu apparently really started putting the screws to Trump and telling him that I think that they are getting ready for a bomb. And when Trump was specifically asked, he said, your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, said there is no plan. And of course, Trump said, I'm sure you've seen now, I don't care what she says. I think there is. Well, one day before that, you had Benjamin Netanyahu saying, when asked about Tulsi Gabbard's statement, he says, well, I think she's wrong. I have more intelligence than she does, and we shared it with them. I don't know why they don't believe it, et cetera. And now all of a sudden here you have Trump just doing a 180. He put terms in that said, no, the red line, you can have no reprocessing, even though he knows that is the one thing that the Iranian side won't negotiate on. And they have said they were willing to negotiate on every other topic except that one. So he sets the standard to where they can't meet it. And so now that you see here, it looks like he's ready to go, and I think the decision's been made. I hope I'm wrong. I'll say that. But all the pieces moving and everything up to this point, I think that's probably where we're at.
And of course, we're discussing today, Daniel, in a potential UK involvement. We know that the Cobra Committee, the Emergency Cabinet Committee, was convened yesterday, and this is something that is being mooted. People talking about echoes of 2003 and the Gulf War. Are those resonances that worry you?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I said a second ago. This is since the March 2003, and really all the time heading up to that, where we were claiming all this stuff about, weapons of mass destruction, and, the Colin Powell holding up that vial saying we have proof, we have intercepted radio, everything to pretend like they had this ironclad thing, that this emerging danger. And now you have Netanyahu basically playing that role himself. And for some reason, you have the President of the United States disbelieving his own intelligence agencies, disbelieving his own hand-picked intelligence officer, and going instead with what Netanyahu says. It's puzzling to me, and I don't know why he would risk taking America to war, because I think the chances that Iran would not follow through with their threats and attack American troops, American ships, and American planes in the region, I think that they're probably going to do that, and I don't know why you would want to risk our lives for something that our country gains nothing.
How much potential do you think there might be for regime change in Iran? And what would that mean both for the region and for the world more broadly?
It's always a possibility. You can't discount it. I mean, look what happened in Libya, right? You sent in with all this air power and you weaken the regime enough where their controls of power were not strong enough, and then all the opposition was able to rise up. So that is a possibility. I think it would be utterly disastrous if it happened. But that's not to say that Iran is in the same place that Libya was. I think that they're much stronger. Their grasp on control and throughout the country, especially the power ministries, I think is much stronger than what Gaddafi had. But listen, we don't want to get into a situation to where we say, forget about international law, forget about rules. We don't like this guy, so we're going to kill him and knock him out, even though he's not actually threatening us. I mean, like we did to Saddam Hussein. People didn't like him. They said he was a bad guy, but he was not actually threatening anyone. And yet we went in there and killed him and knocked him out and put somebody in that we want. We've done that in Iran before, 1953, and how'd that work out? That's what gave rise to the actual revolution in 1979. So if we fail here, by the way, though, then I think you set up a situation to where we're going to come in and we start bombing, and I'm telling you, what next? What if you don't take out the Ayatollah? What if you don't get the regime change? What if you don't knock out Fordo and take out their nuclear processing capacity? Now then you have a situation where they may race to the bomb because now you've given them all the incentive they need to try and defend themselves, and you don't know how you're going to end this. That's the big problem. What comes next? And I don't think anybody has an answer to that.
And I suppose just finally, is there an extent to which, and it does sound like quite a cynical observation, Daniel, that this is a distraction from what's going on in Gaza? You know, this is a distraction from perhaps Israeli persecution, potentially, of people seeking aid in Gaza. You know, we've moved the theatre to the east, and therefore the world's attention is no longer there towards the west.
Well, a lot of people are. I mean, if that's the intent, if that's the desire, I think it's going to be short-lived. So I don't think it's going to work a long time, because I think actually the opposite will end up happening. You're getting now more eyes focused on here. And when more and more people are going, this just doesn't pass the sniff test. This what Israel is claiming, and that they launched a war without provocation. They can claim whatever they want about nuclear weapons, but that doesn't cross or justify attacking another nation if you think they're moving that way. Yet they did. That's getting more negative view on Israel, especially on their government. And I think that's making people look at some of these other policies, like in the West Bank, like in the Gaza Strip. So if that was their intent, I think they're going to accomplish the opposite.
How do you see the next days and weeks playing out? We don't quite know yet what Mr. Trump is going to do. We don't know whether the UK is going to follow suit. Are things likely to escalate?
If Trump does what he said, or what it looks like, rather, let me correct that. If Trump does what it appears he's going to, which is launch a big air campaign, then I think that every bad thing is possible. This thing could escalate. It could blow up in our face. We could have big casualties. We could lose ships, which would then you put it in a situation to where you talk about what next. What do you do if all of a sudden a bunch of ships in Bahrain start going to the bottom of the sea in there, or planes get knocked in, or the troops in Iraq and in Syria and in Jordan start getting blown up with missiles that they have no defense against? I mean, you could have all kinds of riots in the United States about Trump, about why did you take us to war? We elected you to keep us out of dumb wars, and now here you've taken us into one that we can't win. Everything bad is possible for this. I couldn't predict anything beyond that, but it would be bad.